It's just 3 o'clock and you're welcome to where bold conversations meet the heart of the moment. It's Wednesday and we're going global and local all in one show. It's the second day of July and we're stepping boldly into the second half of 2025 with fresh energy, new goals, and of course plenty of bold, inspiring conversations. For me, July always comes with a let's get serious vibe. And I just know this month's episodes are going to deliver as always. So this is Just Siri and we're live and ready to shake tables, to set the tone and have real talk that reflects our reality. But first,
to the global part of today's conversation. Now, in about 2 weeks, African diplomats, business leaders, and policy makers will be gathering in Washington, D.C. for the African Ambassadors Economic Forum, a high-level push to reshape trade, investment, and Africa's economic narrative on the world stage. What's at stake, and how can everyday Africans benefit from these high-level conversations? Now joining us, we have, I'm not sure if we have two guests or one, who will be talking to us through what we have at the African Ambassadors Economic Forum. Dr. Edward Ilechukwu is the guest that's joining us right now on Jasiri. Dr. Ilechukwu, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So much.
All right. Since we're talking Africa's voice, Africa's power, and bridges that we're building across continents, if you care about influence, trade, and development, then this is the moment to lean in. So, Dr. Ilechukwu, please tell us which headline topics will be explored at this year's forum, and why are they particularly relevant to advancing Africa-US trade and investment?
Sure. Again, thank you for having me. It's nice to join you from New York. And what we're looking at is July the 18th and the 19th in Washington, D.C. We were going to have it at the Africa House of the African Union, permanent representative in Washington in the United States. But because of the number of people that has shown interest, we have moved it to a hotel where we're going to have a lot more space to address what we're looking at. Now, in answering your question, I'm not sure if you know, but there's what is called the Africa We Want, a central vision of the African Union's agenda for 2063, which is actually a strategic framework that was adopted by the AU in 2013 to guide Africa's development over 50 years, and kind of represents a collective roadmap for socio-economic transformation across the continent, and aims to deliver a more integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens. So we're looking at trade. We're looking at a prosperous Africa. We're looking at an Africa that is cohesive, together from Mali to Mozambique, from South Africa to Sierra Leone, from Nigeria to Namibia, and on and on and on. This is what we're trying to address. We have guests coming from, obviously, the African Union. Ambassador to the United States going to be joining us. We have friends of mine from the European Union Parliament. I just traveled to Vienna, Austria, where I had about 10,000 people attending. And I was able to address some of the people there and invite them to attend. We have former vice presidents. We have current presidents and ministers and captains of industries who are going to be joining us. Looking at the Agenda 2063, it's actually built around, like I said, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth, though, and sustainable development. And also, we're looking at eradicating poverty in this generation, and we're looking at investing in education, science, technology, and innovation. I also founded another organization called the Global Initiative for the Education and Literacy of African Girls, which we founded in 2014 when the terrorists, I don't know if you remember, kidnapped some girls from northern Nigeria. And that was a place called Borno State. And we had to found that organization to, say, no, we are not going to stand and just by the sidelines and watch people, because of their religious fundamentalism, say that girls will not go to school. So all these things we're going to be addressing there from different angles. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have PLO Lumumba there. I'm sure you know who that is. I worked very closely with the immediate past African Union Ambassador to the United States, Dr. Arikana Chihambori, who speaks out on Africa Daily, and I worked very closely with her in Washington, D.C. on a volunteer basis as a director of education for the whole of the United States. So we're bringing all these brains together, we're bringing all these people together to say it's time for Africa, to say we are going to inspire people, young people,
and I love
to build the Africa we want. Obviously, working closely with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's time. It's Africa's time, and these high-level leaders and experts are expected to be in attendance. We get that. People know that when there's, dates set apart for conferences like this, there's actually an agenda. But my question would be, what fresh perspectives or what you would call actionable insights should participants expect from the keynotes and, the panels filled with incredible people who are making waves in their own respective fields?
So we are saying, and when I say we, I'm talking about GIAA and the whole African continent, that we are tired of Africa's narrative being created by individuals who are not Africans, period. That's number one. And we are saying that it's been too long that Africa has been sitting on the sidelines, more or less like a sleeping giant, and it's playing to others, especially in the Western world. I do a lot of traveling invited by presidents of nations in Europe and Middle East and a couple of other places in Africa. And when you go in there, the narrative you hear about Africa, only Africa, is that Africa needs help. Africa is a dark continent. Africa has only 4% electricity. So when people who are negotiating for Africa, I'm referring to people who are leaders of nations and presidents of nations in Africa, sit on the table, especially with the Western world, like I said, most of the things which they are talking about is how to bring aid from the IMF, from the World Bank. And we are saying as young people, it's time for us to arise and wake up the sleeping giant, which is Africa, by addressing and speaking out against some of these ills that I call them. I'm not sure if you know, but Africa has over 70% young people. And I tell people everywhere I travel all around the world that the strength of any nation is in the youth. Here in the United States where I live, people who fight for America are young people between the age of 18 and 40. Africa is blessed to have a lot of young people sitting on the sidelines, again, absolutely doing nothing, either hawking or doing some kind of petty trade. Because they did not have opportunity to go to school or opportunities to attract investors into the continent. So we are saying that enough is enough. Africa is bigger. And I'm not sure if you know, but over 80% of the world's wealth is in Africa. Talk about DRC, South Africa, talk about the Gold Coast, which is Ghana. I'm going to be in Ghana in a few weeks, meeting with the presidency there to address all these things. Talk about Mozambique, talk about a whole number of them. Okay. Now,
Dr.
the world is fighting in DRC today because they tell people, yes.
Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. If you can hear me, I'd like to ask about the African Union's Agenda 2063, which we're familiar with. Now, in what ways does this forum support the agenda, and are there specific partnerships or initiatives that are expected to launch as a result of this?
There's going to be a block that we're going to form after this meeting. That's number one. Number two, we're also looking at, we have spoken with different presidents of different universities across the globe, not only here in the United States, and we're going to be making sure that young people who are going to be either attending or watching from anywhere in Africa are going to be taking advantage of what we call distant learning, or international scholarships that are being offered by these universities. There's a whole number of scholarships that are being offered by many universities in Canada, in the United States, in the UK, all around the world. We also have partnered with a university located in Egypt, but it's actually a global university that is going to be giving out honorary degrees. We have partnered with other nonprofits, not just GIA. GIA is a platform that has absorbed other nonprofits, including the one I mentioned that has to do with girls. So a prosperous Africa, an integrated continent, establishing a united Africa, an Africa of good governance, democracy, you and I know that's a big one, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. If we are bringing someone like PLO Lumumba, if we're bringing someone like Dr. Arikana Chihombori Kwao, if we are bringing someone like myself, I consider myself an activist that hates injustice anywhere and everywhere. I stand for human rights 100%. When I was growing up in that beautiful country called Nigeria, when I was in college, I got involved with the Students' Union nationally, and I became also the Director General for education for the whole of the nation of Nigeria. And we were traveling from university to university to colleges and all that, addressing some of these things, especially in education.
Okay.
But this is not only in education. If you just 1 second, if you look at what is going on with Mali and Burkina Faso, the Honorable President Ibrahim Traore, and now Niger and Botswana is joining those three countries. These are the things they want to address. They want to make sure the African continental free trade area becomes a reality.
All right.
They want to make sure that there's free movement between countries in Africa. We want to make sure that if we want to go from Nigeria to, say, Libya, you don't have to go to Europe first and then come back again because it's going to cost you more.
Yeah. Dr. Ilechukwu, so you land on a very good point there. That's one that I'm sure that is going to be picked up at the forum, but because of time, we need to quickly move on. So now, as the forum approaches, what is one key message or takeaway that you hope that everyone who attends or everyone who's privileged to watch walks away with? And then please share very quickly where and how people can find out more information about the upcoming forum. You have just about a minute and a half to do this.
We're saying it's time for Africa. It's time for young people in the continent to rise up and begin to form coalitions again from different parts and from different countries in Africa and begin to rewrite the narrative of Africa in politics, in education, in trade, in technology, innovation, and all that. And if you want to sign up and attend this conference, you can visit the website www.aaeforum. That's AAEFORUM.org. You go in there and register, and then you can attend the conference. If you're not able to attend because of some issues with visas or whatever, you can also log in because we're going to be live with News Central. And I thank you very much to my friend Kayode, who is also going to be there physically.
All right,
thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ilechukwu, for joining us today and for shedding more light on the conference. And we're looking forward to the conference. And I'm sure that this year's African Ambassadors Economic Forum will help to chart Africa on a new course. Thanks again.
Thank
All
you.
right. We've done global. Now, after the break, we are going local. We're following up on this directive about indecent dressing that has put Delta State in the spotlight. Our guest is Barrister Bridget Anyafulu, a member representing Oshimili South in the Delta State House of Assembly. Now, from DC boardrooms to Nigerian streets, this is Jasiri. We'll be back after the break.
Welcome back to the show. You're still watching Jasiri, your go-to program for bold conversations and powerful stories. In Delta State, a fresh wave of controversy is sweeping through the streets, and this time it's not about crime or politics, but clothing. The State Police Command has announced a crackdown on what it calls indecent dressing, warning residents that violators risk arrest or a fine of 50,000 naira. But the move has sparked outrage. Critics say it's vague, unconstitutional, and disproportionately targets women. Is this about public decency or an excuse for moral policing? Where is the line between cultural values and personal freedoms? Joining us today is someone uniquely positioned to weigh in. Barrister Bridget Anyafulu, member representing Oshimili South in Delta State House of Assembly. She's a lawmaker, a lawyer, and the person we're asking what exactly is going on in Delta State and who gets to decide what's indecent. Barrister Anyafulu will say welcome to Jasiri, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, Barrister Anyafulu, let's start with the VAPP Act, which was yes, we can hear you. The VAPP Act originally signed into law in 2015 by former President Goodluck Jonathan, and then it was domesticated in Delta State in July 2020. So what we know is that the law seeks to prohibit all forms of violence against persons in private and public life, offering protection to victims and ensuring offenders are sanctioned. So I think one of the big questions many people are asking is, how did we go from prohibiting all forms of violence to cracking down on indecent dressing? What exactly is the legal basis for this recent crackdown on illegal or indecent dressing by the Delta State Police Command? And where does the crackdown fit into this domesticated VAPP law?
Well, thank you very much. The VAPP law is a law that was domesticated in Delta State in 2020. Like you rightly said, it was enacted at the National Assembly in 2015 and domesticated here in 2020 by the State House of Assembly, assented to by His Excellency, the then Governor of Delta State, the immediate past Governor of Delta State. Now, the VAPP law, it's just funny that people are talking about just the Section 29. In Delta State, the issue of indecent dressing is provided for in Section 29 of the VAPP law of Delta State. And in that law, we have about 51 sections of the law. This VAPP law is the first of its kind in Africa, arising from the issues discussed at the African Union and the principles of Maputo Platform for Action. The Nigerian government, the National Assembly, felt it was wise to have that law. And in Delta State, because Delta State is a state that has very high regards for families, it became very imperative that that law, the VAPP law, was domesticated. Now, if you look at the law, you find out that for both genders, it protects both gender, the male and the female. It protects the family. Not just that, it provides for remedies for those, the survivors. It provides also for penalties for the offender, the person who commits the offense, the person who aided and abetted. So it's not like what you have in the criminal code, where you have to go a long distance to come and find justice and have stay a long time in court. Now, Section 29 of the VAPP law in Delta State provides for indecent dressing. First, don't forget that we are Africans. We have the way we dress. And your appearance is your recommendation. And you should be, we all agree that persons be addressed the way they dress.
Okay. All right.
And before I get to that, let me also let you know that we have other provisions of that law as it concerns rape, offensive conduct of persons, talk about incest, talk about intimidation, just to make sure that everybody is protected, the vulnerable persons in the society, including the rich. The moment you're a victim, whether male or female, you are protected under this law.
All right, Barrister, if I may interject, if it's...
And for me, I see the law as one of the best laws in Delta State that has the capacity to protect the family. In this law, in Delta, yes. In this law, you find that in families where there are issues, a man cannot even push the wife out of the house, the spouse, out of the home. When that happens, the law protects that family. Whether male or female, you cannot abandon your family and leave the children and go to anywhere you like, and then you think that you can go free. No, the law protects every family. So I don't know why people are worried about the Section 29 of this law, talking about indecent exposure. This is Delta State. We have other states in Nigeria. The way some people dress, let's take example in Sokoto. Will they dress the way they dress? This indecent dressing, will they dress that way in Sokoto? Will they dress like that in Borno? We need to be proper African women and men. So if you're a young man or a man, whatever, or a minor, as a minor, your parents see you not dressing properly and you're supposed to be under their custody, it is wrong. And when you're an adult, you decide to sag your neck, your trouser, or open your bum in the public. That is indecent exposure.
Barrister,
if you're a young lady...
If we may interject you, Ma, respectfully, I appreciate the fact that you said both male and female, but from the positioning of this law or the wording of it, the communication of it, in fact, it feels as if it's targeted mainly at the females. Even the representation, the cartoon representation on that particular law is a young lady. Yeah. So would you not say this is like a direct attack, if I may say that, on the female gender? And how do we begin to, because when you said indecent exposure, there are two things. How do we determine what is indecent? Are there provisions? Because in most of the law, there are definitions for things. How do we define indecent exposure or what you consider indecent dressing?
And in addition to, if I may quickly add...
Very clear. The law says when you expose your private parts, they privately, where you're supposed to, ordinarily you're supposed to cover up. When you say a young lady with all her tummy out, part of her breast, or you say a young man with a sagging knicker, showing her his pants and all that, those are indecent dressing. Those are very indecent. It's indecent exposure. And I do not think that it is direct targeted at only the female gender. The law is for both gender. The law is for both gender. If you must wear those things, use it in your bedrooms, in your home, not in the public.
We need to work on this. Barrister, I hope you can hear me, but I want us to focus on that Section 29 because the FIJ, which is the Foundation for Investigative Journalism, actually dug into it, and I want to read it in whole. Section 29, subsection 1, a person who intentionally exposes any of his private or her private parts wholly or partly in public commits the offense of indecent exposure. Section 2, subsection 2, a person who commits the offense provided for in subsection 1 of this section is liable on conviction to perform community service or 50,000 naira. So there are some who believe that this is a misinterpretation of the law, that this is an interpretation that goes to dressing versus those who might be what colloquially some might call peeping toms, men or women who are exposing their body parts intentionally in a sexual way, not necessarily because of dressing. So there seems to be a bit of confusion, maybe from the outside looking in. As you said, this is Delta State, but on the outside looking in, indecent exposure is not the same thing as indecent dressing. So are we, is it being conflated? Catherine, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I was saying, why now, if I may ask, why is like the spotlight is on, we are clamping down on this? I mean, people think, well, I mean, is this the best use of police resources? Did something really happen in the moment? And Delta now said, you know what, this is the time to do this. So, sorry, ma'am, we're asking a lot of questions in one.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we're expecting your answer.
What I'm saying, well, I just said that indecent exposure, when anybody is indecently, when anybody dresses indecently, is an indecent exposure. I do not think there's an ambiguity. I don't think there's an ambiguity.
So let me follow up in
There's
that.
no ambiguity in the matter.
Okay.
When you are not properly dressed, you're ordinarily where you are not supposed, other people are not supposed to see, and you come out in public and feel very comfortable with it, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so let me ask about the enforcement of this, because that is a large concern for many people. We've had situations in which not just security agencies, but agencies have used the hammer to kill a nail, or use the hammer on a nail when they see everything as a nail, and then come down with the hammer. But this is a situation where one police officer may see you walk by and not flag you as being dressed indecently, and another police officer might see you walk by and think you're indecently dressed. And having the police be the ones at the forefront of enforcing this worries a number of people. We've had many allegations against police forces around the country, not just in Delta State. Are you concerned about the enforcement of this? Is there a conversation with the Delta State Police in the enforcement, in the expectations of what every single officer should see as indecent versus leaving it up to individual officers to make a decision as to what is indecent?
Yes, I agree that the police is an law enforcement agency. But the police on its own cannot carry out all the actions, because there's a position in the law where the court has jurisdiction to look into all these matters. When police arrest because you are indecently dressed, the next process is to take the person to court, and then you defend yourself. It is not that the police will take over the matter, prosecute, and then at the end of the day, within the confine of the police, and then charge you within the police. Yes, no. The law has to take its course. It is the court that will give such orders, not the police.
Okay, I also want to ask,
So
I don't think
there's any need to fear about what the police will do.
Okay.
When anybody is indecently dressed, and the police arrest that person or group of persons, and they are taken to court, maybe as an overnight case, and the judge or the magistrate walks into the court and see the person, the way the person is dressed, the judge or the magistrate will know whether the person is indecently dressed or there's an issue of indecent exposure, or that the person is properly dressed. It's not the police. It's not for the police to determine that. But the police will have to make arrests, because it's provided for in Part 2 of the law, that the police can arrest at any given point where it feels that an offense has been committed. And in this case,
if you can hear me, so what I'm hearing now is that indecency is based on the judge's discretion. But one other question that I want to ask is a follow-up to what Catherine asked, and I'm not sure that we got an answer as to why now. I mean, I know that Delta, like many other states, is plagued with insecurity. There's still killings. We're still talking about kidnappings. And this is up until just recently, a few days ago. And it just feels like with all of this, the response to insecurity, I mean, youth even came out to protest against insecurity. So it feels like the response to insecurity is an enforcement of a totally different law that somehow feels like a disrespect to what the youths are clamoring for. They're asking for safety, they're asking for their lives to be secure, but now we're trying to enforce a law, you know, that it kind of is different from what the reality in Delta State as well as other states is at the moment.
Well, I didn't hear exactly all that you said, but I think you're talking about security.
Insecurity as well, and
Misplacement
priority.
of priority, but yeah.
Well, I think, well, I heard security issues. You know, security issues are not matters to be discussed in public. But I can tell you that issues of security in Delta State is being handled strictly by the state government. And I can assure you that Delta State is one of the states in this country that that's peaceful, one of the most peaceful states in Delta State. So when issues of security are discussed, it shouldn't be an open matter because the state government knows what to do. And I'm sure they're doing what they ought to do. We are talking about indecent dressing.
So let's talk about the punishments for it as laid out in the law and as you've mentioned. So there are some human rights organizations that have said 50,000 naira as a fine is not only illegal, but may also be exploitative. We also know that community service is an option, which of course is meant to be determined by the judge. But looking at 50,000 naira, in today's Nigeria, Barrister Anyafulu, in today's Nigeria, in today's Delta State, it might be very difficult for a lot of people, if they find themselves caught up in this law, to bring forth 50,000 naira to pay that fine. And I am expecting that it's meant to serve as a deterrent, but is there a point where we move from deterrent to exploiting our people? Can you talk to us about this 50,000 naira fine and why you think, given this law, it's the place to be? Because what I'm hearing from you is that you're in support of the law. So let's talk about whether or not what you think of the fine.
Okay, that's fine. I do not think that there is an issue of exploitation here. I started by telling you that the state government, Delta State government, is a government that have respect for families and expect that the values in our different homes must be very tight, so that when you're moving out of your home, you'll be properly dressed. And it is another way of building the capacity of families, where you have one united family that will come out and be addressed the way they are dressed. And so the law serves as deterrent, also to prevent people from dressing, yes. So you don't just walk out of your home and dress anyhow. So it's just it serves for prevention. So when you come out knowing that this is the position of the law, there is, at any given point, you know that this is the law. You know that this is the punishment. That means you're prepared to pay, because you have to go through the courts. You're not paying money to the police. You're also doing that community work around where you are taking. So anybody who says that is a case of exploitation, I don't want to agree.
Barrister Anyafulu,
I think I totally disagree with that. I'm a civil society person, and it is important that we tell ourselves the truth.
yeah, Barrister Anyafulu, I understand your concerns and your leanings towards decency. But from a constitutional standpoint, Nigeria guarantees that there are some certain fundamental human rights that every basic human is supposed to enjoy. Freedom of expression is one. There are many cadres to expression that is personal. And now when we say this indecent dressing, you know, we have artists, we have people who express themselves like a form of art. I know that recently in Nasarawa State, I want to believe, there was a clampdown on people that have dreadlocks.
No, he reversed
Yes, there was an initial clampdown on it, but when agitation and everybody got into the conversation, he had to reverse the statement and say, okay, not everybody who wears dreadlocks is indecent or cannot be permitted to conduct business in Nasarawa State. So we have to be careful of these things. We have freedom of movement and dignity of the human person. And does this directive not contradict some of our constitutional rights? Because I beg to differ, Ma. Indecent dressing, because when you say exposure of what should be covered, There are many expressions to it. Now we have sheer clothing that we wear camisoles under, that you can literally see through, but not see through. It's still covered. You have like an undergarment under it. I'm worried about the definition that is not straight, that is left to the discretion of whoever. Would this not be contradicting our rights of expression? Imagine an Ira Star, a music artist, on stage in Delta State for a concert, and the Delta State police comes in and comes to take her off the stage because they consider what she's wearing indecent.
There are also body-con dresses that shows a person's shape but doesn't show. So would we say you're showing too much without showing at all?
There's no basis for any argument. We are talking about dressing decently. And every normal person will know that when you dress properly, the world will see that you're properly dressed. We don't need to argue that. We are not going to also borrow other people's culture because we want to talk about our fundamental human rights. If you look at the Constitution, you find out that what the Section 29 is trying to avoid is also in the Constitution. So nobody has infringed the rights of anybody. Nobody has infringed the rights of anybody. And we are not talking about dreadlock here. We are talking about the way we dress. And you're not going to take because you feel that you have fundamental human rights, you do whatever you like at the detriment of others, and then destroying different homes and all that. You come out of the streets and dress anyhow, and tomorrow somebody says, oh, I have been raped because I was wearing something that was showing my breast. It didn't cover my this. That is wrong. We don't need to defend it. Let us do the right thing, and then let's have sanity in our society. And that's what the state is trying to do. If you have to live in Delta State, you must be properly dressed. And then sanity is demanded. We must have sanity in Delta State. Don't come in with anyhow character and think that you are going to talk about fundamental human rights. I am a lawyer. We know the law. And the police who is the prosecutor also know the law. You present yourself before the courts. The courts has no business intimidating anybody. You will look at what is before you and decide what is right and wrong. And those who expose their bodies everywhere know that what they are doing is wrong. We are first Africans, even if there is no morality in law. We are first Africans, and we must protect our dignity. And I'm very happy you talked about dignity. What dignity do you have when your whole body is exposed? So let us not argue to defend something that is wrong. Let us defend what is right, so that we'll be able to hand over. Look at your second standards of the national anthem. That says that you must have you hand over the flag that is not stained. What are you going to hand over to your children when you expose yourself, go everywhere, and then your children will come out? Nobody is normal dressing anyhow. It is not accepted in Delta State. You don't come to Delta State and dress anyhow. You must dress the way you be addressed. And when you see it, you see that we have reasonable adults in Delta State, reasonable children in Delta State. So when they come here, they see that we are doing the right thing. And others will follow. And that is the reason you must hand over a flag that is not stained to your children. You cannot come out to the streets with your breasts open, everywhere open, because you want to impress some people.
Wait. Barrister Anyafulu, we've heard you, but I have to go back to a statement you made in relation to rape. And I find that statement to be a bit insensitive because we have had situations. Rape is not about what anyone wore. Because if we have that conversation, we're going to go in a different direction. We can ask grandmothers, and we can ask young children, and we can ask babies what they wore when they were raped. So I don't think that's an equivalent that we should be bringing into this conversation. I didn't hear you.
We'll discuss the VAPP law as comprehensive as it is. I'm saying that if we must discuss the VAPP law, we are going to discuss it as comprehensive as it is. The VAPP law is a very comprehensive document that addresses the issues that affect the people, both the rich and the poor, both male and female. So we are not going to take one and begin to argue, have a long argument on the matter.
Okay, so let me ask this, and I'm happy you say that because we've had, I think, about 3 conversations regarding the VAPP law here on Jasiri. It is not something we shy away from. We've brought those who are in civil service, not civil service, in the CSOs. We've brought those who work with women and children. We've brought those who are invested in the VAPP law, and we've unpacked in many ways here on Jasiri. So we're not afraid to get into that, but I still stand by what I say. Let us not bring the equivalent of what you wore into a conversation with rape. So very quickly, yes, we know that time is an issue here, but what do you expect to be the outcome of this directive in terms of how it plays out in Delta states? We continue to be particularly concerned. I know you're leaving, but just give us just 2 minutes and we'll free you from here. So what is the outcome, the expected outcome from this directive and the enforcement of it? And then what do you say to young people, particularly young women who might feel targeted, unsafe, or even silenced by this directive because we are worried about the interpretation of the law and those who will work to enforce the law? Barrister Anyafulu.
Well, I would say that we don't have to be worried about what the provisions of the law or what the police will do. The law is very clear. The court has the jurisdiction to determine what is indecent exposure and what is not. The job of the police is to arrest, and the police will not take money from anybody. It is what the court says that will happen, not the police. So the police has no business sentencing anybody when they feel that you have committed such offense. Their job is to make sure that the matter is reported in court, is filed in court, and at the end of the day, the court will give its order, and that's what will follow. It is for the court to determine who is indecently exposed and who is not indecently exposed. The police has no business doing it in the different divisions. So nobody should be worried about what the police will do. The police will only carry out its own duty and then leave the jurisdiction of the courts to determine what the law is.
All right, Barrister Anyafulu, thank you so much for your time. It is a conversation we're going to continue, but we do appreciate you sharing your perspectives and being with us on Jasiri today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've taken notes. We're going to unpack this conversation. Stay with us. Ladies, we have about 10 minutes to do this, and we're already getting reactions from this conversation. I said I took notes, and I'm going to go to my notes because there's several things that Barrister Anyafulu said that I not take exception, but I disagree. And yes, states are allowed to domesticate laws and to have laws that fit into their context. One, I don't think the Sokoto and Borno context is one that fits Delta states. Delta states is not a predominantly Muslim state. While we have freedom of religion, I do not think that is a contextual example that works. Everybody knows what is, I won't say what is expected, but we've seen what even happens when you go into a Borno or Sokoto and you dress a certain way. That is not the expectation in Delta. No. I think that's a false equivalent for me, first of all, that's one. She also said that the law addresses rape and incest, and yes, it does. And it's interesting to me that instead of doing public communication on rape, on incest, educating people as to what the law says on rape and incest, what we're first seeing, or what we're predominantly seeing from the Delta State Police Command, is indecent dressing. Why did you not start with rape? Why did you not start with incest? Why did you not start with communications and public and PSAs on that, but you want to go and do indecent dressing? Then I've always said something, and this is personal to me. I understand when people say, dress the way you want to be addressed. I understand in context. But I also think it behoves on us as humans to not always judge a book by its cover. Sometimes it says more about you and how you behave towards a person who may be dressed in a way you don't approve than it actually says about the person who's dressed in that way. And the fact that it seems she's saying that the courts will decide what is indecent. Law enforcement officers like the police are the ones who will first say you're breaking a law, to take you to court, for the court to confirm whether or not you actually broke the law. So there has to be a place where the Delta State Police is going to say, I'm looking at you and you're indecently dressed. Now I want a judge to say you're guilty or not. So she cannot tell us that it's just the judge, because it's a process. It starts with the police, and I'm worried about police overstretch. I'm worried about the impunity that we've seen before in places even like Delta. Remember the NSTAR started in Delta States?
But
What are we talking about?
You know, when she talked and she said this law is not ambiguous, I stand to disagree with that. Because in every law, there is something you call a definition clause.
Of the law.
Where a definition clause, where something, indecent dressing is, when your dress is 7 meters away from, there must be a uniformity to it. Because that means everybody can just, why are we in court? You are in court sometimes because of the ambiguity of the law or the lack of understanding of it. And that is what will determine when the court will make pronouncements that will make something really obvious. So now, the fear is that what do we define as indecent dressing?
But the law doesn't actually say dressing. This law says exposure.
Those are the things that I consider ambiguous.
Yeah,
and they need to go back and probably redo or reword. Because as it is now, we all know the Nigerian police. Even when you see laws that are written in black and white and say, do not do this, they still find a way to circumvent it. And not to talk of one that is as ambiguous as indecent exposure can be what Olu said. I'm just walking and I just flash boobs at you.
That's indecent exposure.
Considered indecent
But I could have been wearing a suit jacket and fully clothed
and expose themselves in your full view.
The whole confusion and misunderstanding lies in the not defining what indecent dressing is. While I have a problem with that, my problem also is, and the question, Blessings and I, asked the barrister, and she didn't answer, priorities. Delta State youth, the core of Delta State is asking for something different. And you are turning your torchlight on indecent dressing. I want to speak in street parlance, not today. There are children who dress indecently from inside the house before they even step outside. From outside the house to the market, there hasn't been a furore over it. Suddenly, Delta State says, okay, we are doing this, and it's 50K for. Now, there goes the interpretation. Let's take a step further. Interpretation by the police, who is subject to, and she wasn't clear as to who is the one determining what indecent dressing is. So now you're leaving it to the subjectivity of the police. And the police will now run amok, as my lady said here.
And they'll leave chasing Yahoo boys. They'll leave chasing insecurity, and then and the thing is that, no, this indecent dressing, even from the communication from the police, the target is going to be young girls and women.
And no matter how we even try to look at it, we're not, let's not lie, Delta State is not going to try and portray the police as people who don't know what they're doing, who don't know their job. So if the police catches somebody who is similarly indecent, there's every possibility that the judge is going to be tilting towards that. And every judge, let's be honest, has a certain kind of bias. And to be honest, again, and with all due respect, I felt like our guest also spoke with a certain kind of bias, because I hear things like, later you would say that you're being... So it now looks like the solution...
She basically linked being raped to how you were dressed.
It looks like the solution to rape is to dress it, and then she also went further to say that we should not adopt the Western culture. Western culture is not indecency, so that means we're getting somewhere.
Does bad character show in dressing? Do you know that some of the biggest criminals, some of the biggest prostitutes, some of the biggest thieves are the people you'll see that you'll think they're pastors and the imams. That they're so demure, so
what are we even saying as Africans? Are we really kidding me? When we
can we go back to what we were wearing?
Tolu, when women do, she just came from a cultural festival where virgins wear rappers that are short with jigida around their waist to dance. They are making dance. In Africa, we tie cloth around our
in some parts of Africa,
expose our midsection. In some parts of Africa, the traditional rapper is still short. So would we say that is Western culture? It's just evolution of fashion, of tradition, a mismatch of it.
I think we're just following it on a straight line. No one's looking at the detours that this can take.
Everybody knows.
We are looking at the detours because
we are looking. But Delta State, where this is birthed,
It's not shades of grey.
But this same VAPP law, although all states in Nigeria have not domesticated it, the law is there. I have not seen any other states, and we've spoken to people who worked with the law, who worked and who are working to fight. I think it was the senator who was trying to repeal certain parts of it. It was, I can almost beat my chest that the intention of the indecent exposure was not dressing. It was about exposing your private parts to people illegally without their consent.
Illegally.
Those are the things that the law needs to clarify, because she has a valid point. The dressing, we cannot just interpret the law the way we see it. It has to be clear and understood.
And so that's what we're asking for, the clarity of the law. Where do these lines begin and where do these lines end? And the barrister was just, I don't know, we were all
sometimes we're morality police and it's more like a religious bias.
So there's also going to be a part of this conversation where it seems we're here in Lagos. We may not know what the issues like or how indecent dressing has become an issue in Delta State. And if we had more time, that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask, because it feels like you're linking indecent dressing to criminality. You're linking it to issues that are so society wide. But ladies, before they run us out, and the new central group chat is on fire. But we will let you guys know, and I know we've seen some comments on YouTube. This is not over just yet for Delta State. They continue to find themselves in the spotlight, and it's one that we'll continue the conversations on. But it's one that will continue for a while. When the police begin to issue fines and threaten arrest, and these things start spilling over, again, something as subjective as indecent dress, we must ask, where does the law end and personal bias begin? What is the link between indecent dressing and criminality in society? And who decides what is acceptable in a democracy, and more importantly, who holds those decisions accountable? We do that right here on the Jasiri table. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully the ladies have calmed down.
Are you trying to now tell me that?
Wait, no, seriously.